Well, the Kremlin insists that Vladimir Putin's authority has not been weakened by the aborted rebellion that took place at the weekend. A spokesperson also said Russia sees no grounds for peace talks with the Ukraine at the current time. It comes as a group of NATO leaders are meeting tonight to perhaps discuss the ongoing conflict. So for more on this, we're going to be joined by SABC News correspondent John Bevir in Finland, which obviously looks at the latest. John, good afternoon. Thank you for your time with us here. Perhaps you could just speak to what's emerging. The Kremlin trying to show Vladimir Putin as being in complete control. Does the rest of the world believe and agree with that stance as we speak?
Well, I don't think the rest of the world is quite as convinced as Russia is as to the level of control and support that Vladimir Putin has. Ever since his TV address that was broadcast last night, Russian time, this has been an operation by the Kremlin and by instruments of the Russian government in order to show their president as being in control, very much blaming the rebellion just on some bad actors at the head of the Wagner group, and now saying that things are back to normal and that the president is very much in control and is holding firm. Certainly you could argue that the rest of the world isn't as convinced. NATO are meeting again. Around half a dozen NATO leaders are meeting with the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg in the Netherlands later today, as he said. And so NATO will be discussing again the situation in Russia, but also the impact it's having on the war in Ukraine and the counter-offensive that's still ongoing, that we're seeing very small gains by the Ukrainian army. They're having to fight very hard for every metre of land that they claim.
John, a big unknown at this point is the whereabouts of Wagner leader. Have we seen anything of him since the dramatic scenes at the weekend?
Yeah, we had that 11.5-minute audio message, didn't we, yesterday, where he was saying their aim had never been regime change or anything along those lines, and that very much they were just aimed at trying to change the head of the military in Russia. But in terms of whether we've seen him, we keep looking and we keep checking in with various sources, but at the moment there is still no sign of him officially. As you mentioned before, a plane associated with one of his companies was seen landing in Belarus earlier. We don't know if he was on that plane. We're going to have to wait and see. So that is something we're going to be keeping an eye on, because obviously that is a big unknown in all of this. And the fact that someone who led a mutiny that then got abandoned, but still led a mutiny against the Russian state, ended up shooting down and killing some Russian pilots, well, the man in charge has simply been allowed to walk free. This coming in a country where plenty of people end up in prison for an awfully long time for not doing anything near as bad. So a lot of people were questioning Vladimir Putin in letting him go. So we wait to see where he pops up next and what happens from then.
Questions, John. Thank you for your time with us here and perhaps giving us that update. John Bevir in Finland, SABC News correspondent, with the latest there ahead of the meeting that obviously is set to take place a little later today to discuss obviously the Russia-Ukraine war and perhaps also developments since the mutiny that occurred in Russia over the weekend.